morning, everyone. 1 second, please. Okay, we're up to Parakeh, Mishna Beis. And the Mishnah reads, Sa'at Truma Tameya Shanaf L'Sei Chameya Chulin Tahirin. As we learned previously, if Truma falls into Chulin, there's 100 times more of Chulin to the Truma. Truma becomes nullified. In our case, the Truma that fell in was Tameh, and it fell into 100 times more of Chulin. So the fact that the Truma is Tameh doesn't mean that it doesn't become nullified. If it's 100 times more, it does become nullified. Not only is the Truma status nullified, the Tuma, the impurity status, is nullified. Now, anytime the Truma becomes nullified, I still have to separate the amount that fell in to compensate the Kohen for his loss of money, of the Truma that belonged to him. So in this case, where the original amount, which is a Sa'ah of Truma, was Tameh that fell in, so here we have a discussion about what exactly is going to be done with that Sa'ah of Truma that you take out from the mixture that, again, nullified everything, nullified the Truma and the Tuma of the Truma. Now that I have to take out a Sa'ah in this case, how do I treat that Sa'ah? The one that I use to compensate the Kohen. Rebbe Lezer says, Teiroi Mesi Saref. It should be raised up, it should be burned. Shani Omer, for I say, Sa'ah Shanaflahi Sa'ah Sha'alsa. The Sa'ah that fell in is the Sa'ah that came out. That means to say, according to Belezer, the Sa'ah that fell in originally was Tameh. It was Truma and it was Tameh. Although halachically it was nullified, and therefore what I separate now from this mixture is not Truma and it's not Tameh. Belezer says that the Sa'ah that comes out has to be treated exactly like the original. The original was Truma and it was Tameh. You have to treat it like it's Truma and it's Tameh. So there's two stages here. Stage number one is that what I take out to compensate the Kohen with, although it's not really Truma, the sages wanted us to treat it like Truma. Because if we treat it like Truma, then we know that he's going to give it to the Kohen. Otherwise, if we don't, he may not really be that careful about giving it to the Kohen. But by treating it like Truma, which means that, he has to treat it like Truma. He can't let it become impure. He can't eat it. That will make sure that he will give it to the Kohen. So step number one is that the Sa'ah that comes out, that is taken out of the mixture to compensate the Kohen, has to be treated like Truma. It has to be treated like Truma. Rebbe Lezer says not only has to be treated like Truma, it's got to be treated like the original Truma. And the same way the original Truma was Tameh, we have to look at this as if it's Tameh. All right, now, so if it's Tameh, in the situation where, let's say, we had this before, if let's say the Truma was Tameh and the Chulin was Tameh, everything was Tameh, okay? When you compensate the Kohen, the only thing the Kohen can do, or whatever you give a Kohen, let's take a step back. The only thing a Kohen can do with Truma that's Tameh is burn it, use it as fuel. And therefore, here, when the Mishnah says, when Rebbe Lezer says, I got to treat the Sa'ah that I'm using for compensation to the Kohen, I got to treat it like the original amount that fell in. Therefore, I got to treat it like Truma that's Tameh. So give it to the Kohen. By giving it to the Kohen, he'll burn it. But the Ratanura learns, and this is based on the Yerushalmi, based on the Talmud Yerushalmi, the Jerusalem Talmud, that that's not what it means here. We had a case before where we were concerned that if you give the Kohen this Truma, right, in the case of Meduma, if you give the Meduma from give them the Truma, the Meduma, the mixture, where the Truma was Tameh and it fell into less than 100. So the whole thing is now a mixture of Truma, and it has to be considered a mixture of Truma, that's Tameh. There we said that when you give it to the Kohen, or actually we said don't give it to the Kohen, let it rot. Because we were afraid that since Meduma, the mixture that we consider like Truma, people aren't careful with, if we let them get it let the Kohen get it and burn it, he may come to eat it. So therefore he said, let it rot. Here, it's the same idea. Being that Rebbe Lezer says we have to treat the Truma Tameya, we have to treat this Truma like Truma Tameya. And in this case, again, this is the compensation Truma. Here too, we are afraid that if we allow them to go ahead and burn it, they may come to eat it. Because again, it's not your regular case, not your regular case of real Truma Tameya. So once it's not your regular case of real Truma Tameya, we're concerned that if we allow them to use it at all, they may use it for eating, and that they're not allowed to do. That clearly we don't want them to do. So therefore, the Bar Tanura learns, the commentary of the Bar Tanura learns that here when it says it should be burned means burned. Burn it up, destroy it. Or if you want, let it rot. Those are your choices here. But we don't want it actually going to the Kohen to be used as fuel. The Chachamim say, Tala v'sei achel. What you take out now to compensate the Kohen, it comes up and it can be eaten. Let me just finish reading the Mishnah. The kudam kloyes, it should be eaten dried or toasted. Oitilish b'mei peres are kneaded with fruit juice. Oitischalek li'isais are divided into doughs. So that you do not have an egg's volume in one place. We had something similar before to this. In a situation where the truma that was tar got mixed with the chulin that was tummy. And there was 100 times more of the chulin against the truma. So in that case, what happened is we said, well, I have to make sure that I don't use, when the Kohen gets this mixture, he has to make sure not to make the truma that fell in tummy. And therefore we said, so we're starting off first of all that we said the grain wasn't susceptible to tumah, and you got to make sure it doesn't become susceptible to tumah, and therefore these are the ways of doing it. This is the same thing or a similar thing that's happening now according to the Chachamim. The Chachamim say like this. Step number one is that what you take out to compensate the Kohen has to be treated like truma. That's number one. But they argue with Rebbe Lezer that we don't have to treat it completely like the original truma. We don't have to treat it like the truma that was tamei. We can treat it like regular truma. Since we can treat it like regular truma, we raise it up and we give it to the Kohen. However, the Chachamim still are limiting how this should be eaten, because it says it should be raised and it should be eaten in a very specific way. Why? If it's not truma tameya, so just give it to the Kohen and let him eat it the way he wants to. Why are we concerned here otherwise? So the explanation that's explained, and it's explained here in the Yad Avram, the Bar Tanura, is that there's a problem here. And the problem here is the fact that, and before I explain the problem, whatever the problem is going to be, it's going to be a problem that says that we have to make sure that the sa'ah that I'm treating like truma that I give to the Kohen has to be eaten in these methods here that we mentioned, which are methods that don't allow something to become tamei. And the leftover mixture, after you take out the sa'ah of truma, the leftover mixture, here too, the mixture also has to be eaten in this way. And okay, so let's explain this. So as we mentioned before, the truma and the chulin that were mixed together never came into contact with water. They're not susceptible to tumah. And we want to make sure they don't become susceptible to tumah. But why do we want to do that? Isn't it just regular truma? So the explanation that's given in the Yad Avram, brought down from the commentaries, is that there is a potential problem here. And that is, as we mentioned before, that the sa'ah of truma that mixes in with the chulin is 100 times more. Both the truma status and the tumah status become nullified. There's a very interesting concept called chayes v'neir. Under certain circumstances, there's a concern that something that became nullified is actually, we look at it as dormant, and it's possible to be reawakened. It became nullified in the sense that, okay, it's not tummy right now, but the tumah is dormant, and it's possible to be reawakened. Now, how would that happen in this case? It would happen like this. So we had the sa'ah of truma tameya, fell into 100 times more of chulin, it became batal. Everything became batal, right? The truma became batal, the tumah became batal. I have here a pile of grain that's 101 sa of chulin. Okay, but I do know that I'm going to be separating 1 sa out of this chulin, and it's going to be treated like truma. So here's the problem. A person might decide, and I'm not sure if he's allowed to do this because one is not supposed to nullify things intentionally. However, if let's say somebody were to go ahead, he's got this pile of 101 sa of chulin. It's all tar. Now he takes, let me read it to you here. He might take a kav of chulin, right, which is a sixth of a sa'ah. He may take a kav of chulin that is tamei and mix it with just over a kav from this mixture and think that he thereby nullified the tumah in a majority of non-tamei. Okay, again, he might take a kav of chulin that is tamei and mix it with just over a kav from the mixture and think that he thereby nullified the tumah in a majority of non-tamei. When you have two things that are dry, they don't mix completely, then the rule is really that it becomes that what you want to become nullified can be nullified in something else that's just a majority of it. So this person thinks, all right, I'll take out a little bit more than a kav from this mixture. It's chulin, right? And I'll go ahead and I'll add a kav of truma tamea to it, and I'll nullify it. Sounds good, but it's not. In fact, however, since the kav plus of the old mixture contains some of the nullified tamei truma in it, combining it with the new kav would form a majority of tuma in this new mixture, reawaken the tuma that had previously been nullified. Everything in the new mixture would then be rendered tamei without the person realizing it. If you now mix in to this kav plus truma that's tamei, a kav truma that's tamei, so it comes out now that I have a majority of what is now tamei. Because if I take that new kav and I mix it into this mixture, so now I have tamei plus what used to be tamei, it can reawaken what used to be tamei, and now I'll have a majority of tamei, and now I have a tamei mixture. I have a tamei mixture left. That's the concern here. That's the concern what this person may do. And because of that concern, the Chachamim say, I now have to make sure that I have to treat everything here in a way that it's considered I have a mixture of tuma and I have tamei grain, I have chulin grain, and I have to make sure that everything is treated. I have to be treated as if I have a mixture here of tuma and not tuma. My understanding is that after he, makes this mixture that he thought is okay, and now it becomes tamei, right? What does he do? Throws it back in to the mixture. And if he throws it back into the mixture, well, let me take that back. Well, yeah, he's not going to have any more. He's not going to have any more majority of tar. He's not going to have a majority of tar anymore. He had 101. He had 100 of chulin sa against the tamei sa, but now he lessened that 100 times more. So he puts it back in. Everything is going to be a mixture again. And now when I actually try to raise up, when I take out the compensation, the truma that I'm compensating for, it's going to be a mixture of tamei and not tamei. So therefore, the Chachamim said, in order to, I guess, prevent all of this or to avoid all of this as much as possible, and not to have these problems, you have to treat everything as if it's a mixture. And because you have to treat everything as if it's a mixture, whether it's what you separate or what's left over, in either case, you're going to have to make sure that you don't make anything more tamei. And all this is to prevent any kind of problem or able to make sure that people realize the potential problem, that could come. If they do this, they actually made sure to treat everything as if it is a mixture. And therefore, if we're treating everything as if it is a mixture, then I want to make sure I don't make anything more. I have to want to make sure that I don't make anything more tamei. So therefore, the Mishnah says, well, if you don't make anything more tamei, so now you have to eat it and prepare it in a very specific way. So number one, the Mishnah said, eat it dried or roasted. Eat it dried or roasted. I mean, the problem is if I turn it into a dough and I use water to make the dough, I have now rendered everything acceptable to tumah. And if it's now rendered acceptable to tumah, it's going to become tamei when they come into contact with each other. So therefore, the first option is eat it dry or roasted. No liquid came into contact with it. So what is not tamei won't become tamei. Or if you're going to knead a dough, use fruit juice. Use the kind of fruit juice that does not make it acceptable to tumah. Okay, and by doing that, it won't be acceptable to tumah. So there'll be no problem with the dough. Or divide the doughs so that you don't have in one place the volume of an egg. Now, let's remember here that we're talking about the leftover. We're not just talking about the sow that got separated. We're talking about the mixture that was left over. We also have to treat it this way. So let me read you how the Yad Avram explains this. Not an egg's volume of the original Truma Tameya, meaning you want to make sure there isn't an egg's volume of the original Truma Tameya in one place. Now, what that means is like this. The Truma is assumed to be evenly spread throughout the mixture. That's our assumption. Therefore, since the concentration of the Truma in the mixture is 1 part in 101, right? It was 101. It was 101. It was 100 chulin and 1 of Truma. So since the concentration of the Truma in the mixture is 1 part in 101, a quantity of 101 eggs volume will contain 1 egg's volume of the original Truma, and hence 1 egg's volume of tamei produce. Because that's how we say that's what we have here. That's what we have in this mixture. Since an egg's volume of tamei produce can convey tuma, if we wish to avoid spreading tuma, the largest dough that one can make from the mixture is one containing less than 101 eggs volume. Thus, the original mixture can be kneaded even with water by dividing it into a series of doughs, each containing less than 101 eggs volumes. Because then, okay, I'm going to say that whatever amount of the original truma may be in here is less than the volume of an egg, and it can't convey truma. So these are going to be the ways by which the Chachamim, who say that, what comes out isn't actually considered tamei truma, and it's not, meaning what you compensate with is not tamei truma, it's not truma tameya, it's not truma that's tamei, and therefore, burn it, let it rot, only use it for fuel. No, you can eat it, but you're going to be limited in how you eat it. And all this is, again, in order to prevent this kind of problem of a person reawakening the tumah. In order to avoid that, and he's not going to realize it, we basically considered everything here like a mixture of chulin and tamei, and therefore it has to be eaten these very specific ways. Okay, now we have the mitzvah. A prohibition to be intimate with one's sister, whether it's your sister only from your father or only from your mother, and even if this sister was born from that parent out of wedlock. Shenemar, as it states, Erebas achois chabas avi chabas imecha. One may not be intimate with you. You may not be intimate with your sister, the daughter of your father, or the daughter of your mother, whether this bias, one born in the home, a miladas chutz, or born from the outside, meaning out of wedlock. Leisegale, you may not be intimate with her. If this done intentionally, the punishment is kares, divine severance of one's life. There would be no capital punishment for this. And intentionally, this carries a sin offering. And if she's also the daughter of your father's wife, then you'll be liable for 2 prohibitions. Number 1, she's your sister. But also because it's the daughter of your father's wife. This applies in all places and at all times. Have a wonderful day and a wonderful Shabbos.